Hi y'all, it's your girl Lauren reporting live from Cooper and Sanford at George Stevens Park here in Arlington, Texas. We are Arlington Urban out here with the community, and we're here to celebrate the culture of our people. Big ups to the whole AUME family, where it's always Arlington first.
We own the hood. If you live by it, die by it, then, man.
Okay. Prince the Pleasure. All right, Mr. Dewayne Washington, how are you today?
I am wonderful. Lauren, how you doing?
Good, thank you. And what do you want people to refer to you as?
You know what? They can call me Dewayne. They can call me Pastor Washington. They can just say, hey, man, what's going on? As long as they acknowledge me, I'm fine.
Awesome. All right, so let's get into a few background questions. Where are you from?
I'm originally from Fort Worth, Texas, not far from where we're sitting right now.
Okay, awesome. Tell us a little bit about your time in high school. What high school did you go to?
I went to two high schools. They're specialty high schools that were inside of larger high schools. So one is called the High School for Finance Professions, located in Polytechnic in Fort Worth, Texas. A lot of people are familiar with Poly. And the second high school was an IB school. A lot of people are familiar with International Baccalaureate schools. And this one was located inside of Oscar Dean Wyatt, or O.D. Wyatt High School in Fort Worth, Texas.
Nice. So how would people describe you in high school?
How would they describe me in high school? That's an interesting question. They would have said that here's a talented individual. I'm a saxophone player. As a matter of fact, my band director, Mr. James Hamilton, just passed away, and I went and spoke at and played at his funeral. So they definitely would have said that. They would have said, here's a studious young man. And now, I didn't think about it till just now, but they probably would have said, here's a young man that we would think that one day would be in politics with president or something like that. I was all about the people even back then, you know, running for student council and going back to middle schools and helping them out, going back to my elementary school. So they would say that, yeah, this is a guy that would be involved in those types of things. And even now, you know, I get the response, yeah, we kind of figured that was the case. And so I think that's what they would say.
So what do you think influenced you from an early age to get involved inside of politics?
I think there's a lot of things that influenced me. And my kindergarten teacher, Miss Hughes, she just passed away a couple of weeks ago. She influenced me because she was able to take a young man and make me like school and learning for the rest of my life. Other teachers, such as Ann Cotton in my high school, who was my history teacher. But she taught me, I'm not really teaching you history. There's only a few dates that I care that you care about. But what I'm teaching you is how to learn. Also in high school, Mr. Dansby, who a lot of people in Fort Worth may know him as the superintendent, the old superintendent. But he was the principal at my school. And what I noticed with him is that the year before he got there, we had a lot of issues and problems with the, let's just say, with the administration there at the school. And it caused a lot of downhill problems. And Mr. Dansby came in my senior year, and everything turned around. And when I say everything, I mean literally, we went to state and everything. Our football team went to state. Our basketball team, Dunbar used to always go to state, and we would support them. But that one year, they sat at home. O.D. Wyatt went to state in basketball. Our whiz quiz team went to state. And what I was able to see is the impact of leadership, the impact of one person and what they can have on an entire society. And I think seeing that is really what kind of shaped me. It shaped my leadership ability, it shaped my leadership skills, knowing the value of good leadership, you know, and learning that at a very young age.
Nice. So tell us a little bit about your family. Are you a family-oriented person?
Yeah, on most of my bios, that's the first thing listed, that I'm husband to one and father to four. So I've been married for 25 years. In my phone, she's listed as my favorite person. She's definitely my favorite person, my sweetheart. I call her my cuteness, just so y'all, a little insight on that. So if you hear that, that's what it is. I have 4 children that are great children, better than I deserved. They were better than I was that age. Ranging from 14 all the way up into 22, you know. So, and it's like 2 girls and 2 boys. So, matter of fact, one of them is around here somewhere today. So, and they all work with me. We all work together. They all work in my company. So it's a pretty neat. We're a pretty tightly knit family.
Nice. So tell us a little about your company and your occupation. What do you do on a day-to-day?
What do I do on a day? It all depends on the day. I do a lot of different things, right? So I run an organization called Gentlemen's Society. It is one that takes young men and trains them how to become gentlemen through 23 or so different courses. We also have the partner to that, which is the Ladies Society. So do a lot of work there. We've now been training in 23 states, and we've trained in 9 countries. It'll be the 10th country this month, actually. Romania is coming on board. So we do that and work with young boys. A lot of volunteer work, until recently with COVID, we're still going into the prisons every week, the youth prisons, helping those kids out. A lot of filming. I own a film company, ton of that. I have a few other companies that do, like I said, a lot of stuff. Reign of Wealth, we help people obtain wealth. So just a little bit here and a little bit there, a lot of different types of things. A serial entrepreneur, I guess is what you can say.
Nice. All right, so you listed on the information about the mayor that you were a programmer. Will you explain this title a little bit more to us as well?
Computer programmer.
Okay.
Right, so I started programming when I was in 4th grade. And since then, I've done a lot of programming since, and now specialize in something called business intelligence or analytics. People will know it as data associated with it, and been able to write books about it, speak about it, do a lot of implementations. We had some implementations that have been covered by some pretty high-profile publications, including the Wall Street Journal. So I'm known in that world as the BI Pharaoh or the business intelligence Pharaoh, but it's all about data, which actually helps in things like this. So perfect example. I heard a guy one time say that if you strangle the data long enough, it will confess to anything. In other words, people use facts and figures to their benefit. So one of the things that you will hear people say is, oh, well, crime is down, right? Or the crime rate is down. And for example, in Arlington. Well, and that's true. And the statement that I'll make is crime rate's down everywhere in Texas. And the reason why the crime rate is down is not because of anything that anyone did as far as stopping crime. Crime rate is based off of the population or crimes per population. Well, the population in Texas has been increasing. So by default, the crime rate has gone down because the population has increased faster than the crime has increased. However, the crime has not gone down. There's not less property crime happening, there's just more people. So for example, if you were the only person that lived on your street and you got your car broken into, that's 100% crime on your street. But if 10 people moved onto your block and now 5 of them got the car broken into, well, now the crime is at 50% instead of 100%. We've lowered crime by 50%. No, it increased by 500%, right? And so once again, knowing how to look at data, knowing how to analyze data has really helped me even in this position.
Okay. How do you think that your many titles can help you in the position of mayor if you were elected?
I think the biggest thing is that if you look at all the things that I've done, whether it's being a musician or a programmer, all of them have allowed me to permeate all levels of life. Whether we're talking about homeless people on the street or we're talking about billionaires in their yachts, I've spent a significant time with all of them. And it gives you a chance to be able to not only connect with different people, but it also gives you a chance to analyze where they are and come up with solutions for where they are. You can hear them, you can listen to them, you can speak their language, and then you can articulate that in a way that creates policy to help all people involved. So when we talk about Washington for Arlington, it's not just Washington for this part of Arlington or that part of Arlington or the poor people or the rich folks. It's all the way across the board. And I think that you'll find, like in the line of works that I've done, they all seem to be able to help people, no matter who that person is. And so having that type of diverse background, having to go into different situations, whether it is a dangerous situation like going into a crack house or a prison, or a corporate situation going and talking to a CEO, quickly assessing what the problems are and quickly coming up with solutions for those issues is a benefit as being mayor.
Awesome. So going back a little bit into your title as a computer programmer, how do you think that the city can address the lack of diversity in technology?
It's simple. You know, earlier today, before we started rolling, we were talking, and we talked about why am I a programmer? How did I get into it? And I mentioned earlier, you know, I was in 4th grade, and what I didn't say is that we were talking about earlier is that a young lady stopped by my school every day to be able to teach us programming. She volunteered her time when I was in 4th and 5th grade. Well, long story short, what I didn't know until this past year is that I was not even supposed to be at that school. As a matter of fact, I was part of an integration program for that school. So there wasn't many people at that school that looked like me, and even with that, I was not supposed to be there, right? There were some other things that went on to get me to that school, which means that I would not have had access, okay? It didn't mean that I wouldn't have the temperament, that I wouldn't have the ability and skills. I just wouldn't have the access. I wouldn't have the availability. So if we want to address the issue, you've got to go to where the diversity exists and give them access, give them a chance. So for example, putting together programs that go to schools that don't have programming courses there, and having people like myself volunteer to come back and be able to teach these individuals programming, databases, web development, all business intelligence. They can begin to learn that at a young age, but we've got to go to where they are. It's not that they're not smart enough. Please, that's not it. It's not that their background won't afford them to do it. It's simply access. It's the same reason why you found a lot of black kids in Texas don't play lacrosse. It's not because they can't play lacrosse. It's because lacrosse is not offered at the schools where they go to. Right? It's as simple as that. It's as simple as access.
Alrighty. So you're very involved as well in with the youth. What infrastructures can you place that can help the youth across Arlington?
It's once again simple. If we look at a few different things, we look at 9/11. We look at the attacks on our embassy. You look at the attacks that happened in the nightclub in I think it was in France. You look here at Columbine. You look at the blowing up of our buildings here in Oklahoma City. One of the things that is congruent across all of those things is at the core. Even when we look at the core of our issue with the sex trafficking, at the core of all of those things is an out-of-control male. An out-of-control male can affect lives so significantly that they can destroy family trees. We've seen that happen even over in Fort Worth, where a gentleman got drunk and killed 4 people. Out-of-control male. When you put programs in place to be able to speak to, curb, and create a society that all but gets rid of the mentality of the out-of-control male, you solve most of your issues and problems. That's how, you want to talk about how to reduce crime? That's how you reduce crime. You look at young men at the early ages, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You give them mentorship. You give them access. I've spoken with and dealt with well over 10,000 drug dealers in my life, probably more so than anybody you've ever talked to. I've never met one that likes selling drugs, that just, oh, I have nothing else to do, I'm going to sell drugs. That was what they saw. That was their means to an end. That was their way of feeding their family. I've spent a lot of time in youth prisons. I was volunteer of the year in youth prisons. I've told all those kids before, if either one of you were my sons, you probably wouldn't be here, right? Period. Reason why is they just weren't given the access. Though they did what was in front of them. We put together programs in those places to turn those kids around, and I'm like, a lot of them say, some of them say, I'm glad I got locked up because it gave me an opportunity to deal with the program. I never would have had this opportunity otherwise. When cities start saying, I want to take note of our youth, things change. Lauren, I've got to the point where I can go to a city and I can tell you what's important to that city. I can go to the local prison or the local jail, and I can go to the local school. Whichever one is nicer, that's what's important to that city. If the school is nicer than the prison or than the jail, I can tell where your priorities lie. If the jail is nicer than the school, I see where your priorities lie, and I see where you plan on putting children that don't make it here, right?
Can I ask you about Arlington? Which one do you think is more important, school or jail?
Well, let's look at both. Okay, let's look at, we're spending over double what other cities would spend on their police, their police force. Let's look at our schools. Can you name an A-rated school? Because I haven't been able to. I can name a D-rated school. I haven't been able to name an A-rated. And so when we just look at those two dynamics by themselves, tell me which one is important, the most important. When the Bible says, wherever your heart is, your treasures lie. Let me see your pocketbook and I can tell you what's important to you, period. So if I was to take up somebody's individual home and I just go through their expenditures, I can tell what's important to them. So when I go to a city and I look at its expenditures, I can tell what's important to you, right? Now, on one end, we can say, oh, well, we own a lot of police because that keeps us safe. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. That's not the thing that keeps you safe. The safest cities do not spend a ton. Plano is one of the safest cities to live in Texas. And yet they spend about half of what we spend on the police. Now, this is not a slam on police. We're going to see in a minute. I love police. I love good police. I love that. But it is where the city determines to allocate its funds. And if we continue to allocate them the way we have been allocating them over the next 20 years, I think that you're going to see even a bigger increase in crime. Crime right now is higher in Arlington than the average in the state of Texas, right? I think that you're going to continue to see that increase. We'll have a great city to visit, but no one will want to live there.
Exactly. That's a good analogy too with Plano schools as well. I mean, I used to judge kids' debate, so going to their schools, I see like they have very, very nice schools for sure.
Right.
So.
There's a city here in the DFW Metroplex. If you go to their high school, they've got 2 weight rooms, $1 million a piece, beautiful facility. Almost across the street is their police facility. And it's in like double wides. It's literally in trailers, right? And just looking at those 2 things, you can say, I see what's important. And I learned that from a pastor in Tulsa. He came to me one day, we were visiting him there. He said, Pastor Washington, we have 700,000 square foot of building here at this church. He says 600,000 of it is dedicated to children and youth. You don't have to ask us what's important.
That's a good point. All right, and then speaking into ministry as well, how did you get involved in ministry?
How did I get involved in it? I was, I did not grow up in church. Me and my mom go back and forth with this every time she hears me say it because we didn't grow up going to church. Like, you know how you have those CME Christians, those Christmas, Mother's Day, and Easter's Christians? We weren't even that.
Like, we didn't even go to church
on Easter. We got new Easter suits and did not go to church. We did something else, you know. So we didn't go to church. And my mom was like, no, I took you to church. Mom, you did not take me to church. Like, when did you take me to church? We went to church when we lived in California. Mom, I was 6 months old. You know what I'm saying? I can't remember that. What happened, this is an interesting story. The first church I started going to, I went because a teacher had invited me to come and play saxophone at their church. And so I came and I played, and I decided to stay at that church. They bought me a Bible. I appreciated that. And, I read it. And that church actually ended up kicking me out. Like, stopped me at the door one day, so I didn't dress properly, so you can't come back here. And I never planned on going back to church in my life. And a friend of mine one day, she called me up. She said, hey, you know, you always take me around everywhere, and, you know, I got a new car now, and why don't I take you to go bowling? Yeah, sure, let's go. So she came by, she picked me up, and we stopped by her church. Like, wait, you say anything about church? You know, it's like, no, you know, this is with the church singles group or whatever it was, I don't know. And we're all meeting here. And the pastor got up and said something, and he literally talked for 2 minutes, if that, you know, which is, you know, untypical. You know, so we went bowling, and I got saved at that church. I ended up being a youth pastor at that church. I served as an associate pastor at that church, and at some point, went on and started my own church.
Right.
Senior pastor of that church. But it all started with a bowling alley.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird.
Wow. Alrighty.
Nobody's ever asked me that, by the way.
About church? All right. So what are some of the big issues in Arlington that you would like to address?
Our biggest issue is the issue that cascades into everything else, and it's the one that nobody talks about. It's the red-headed stepchild. And as a friend of mine said, he said, Dewayne, you can't really talk about that stuff because no one sits at the table talking about what you're talking about. And he's right. But it doesn't mean it doesn't need to be addressed, and that's our debt. Our debt impacts everything else. Mm-hmm. You want to know why all of these little sneaky fees are coming up, and why your taxes can double in a year. And a good friend of mine was putting on an event in Arlington, and he did all the paperwork and everything, and then after the fact, the city of Arlington came back with this enormous fee out of nowhere. Right? It was like, man, I will never throw anything in Arlington again if this is the kind of way you do business. But you wonder why all of that's the case? Debt service, right? Debt service. When you see cities that are debt free, they're not doing those types of things. Period. And it's one of those things. People will say, well, Arlington can do several things at one time. No, it can't. It's one bucket of money, right? And most of the things most of the money in that bucket comes from the citizens. So if you begin to take more out of that and you need to replenish it, where are you going to get it from? We don't sell products in Arlington, right? The money comes from the taxpayers. So when you look at being able to support youth services, when you look at being able to put money in the pockets of seniors and homeowners in the way of bigger homestead exemptions and that kind of thing, when you look at the kinds of things that really would impact somebody, like truly lowering our tax rates when it comes to our homes, because people say, well, we lowered your taxes. No, you didn't. They doubled because the valuations went up. So if you were paying $5,000, you're paying $10,000. Somebody telling you that that's lower, we call that BS Mountain.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's not what's really happening. But really being able to stand next to the citizens and be a help to the citizens, right? Wouldn't it be nice if when we had the storm come through, that the city was able to say, give us a call on this number. We're going to, and we've put talk about this in a minute, but infrastructure to be able to even do that, right? To be ready for something before it happens, not as it happens. But the city says, we got your back. If you're out of water, call this number, we'll deliver water to you. Okay? You need firewood, call this number, we'll deliver firewood to you. And be in a position to be able to do that, right? From an infrastructure perspective and from a finance perspective. But when you're, robbing Peter to pay Paul, I mean, think about in your own life, right? When your debt goes up, you have less money to do everything else, less money to give, less money for ministry, less money to help somebody else out, right? So that's exacerbated when it comes to a city. So our debt, once again, when you look at everything, crime, that's associated with debt. I mean, people are like, well, how is crime associated with debt? Crime is a lagging indicator, okay? Understand that. Crime is not a leading indicator. So when we have crime, high crime in your area, you don't go hire more police officers. That doesn't fix your crime problem. A lot of cities will do that. That's not the answer. That's like saying, we've got an issue with cancer. Let's hire a lot of nurses. No, nurses react to that. Police respond to crime. They don't lower crime. And when cities expect chiefs of police to lower crime, that's a misplaced expectation. Don't place it on that gentleman. Don't place it on that lady. That's not their responsibility. Their responsibility is to respond. It's the city's responsibility to bring down crime. How do you do that? Through curbing the criminal activity and the criminal mindset before it even begins. But you've got to say, we're going to invest there. We want to invest in our youth. We want to first of all, you got to make it a priority, first off. We've got to give youth some opportunity, plug them with people. I mean, there's plenty of statistics to say that, but I can tell you in my own life, this is what we do on a regular basis. That's how you change a city, right? You build people, not you concentrated on building buildings. People build the city.
Exactly. So moving into some more community-based questions, how do you feel about the city's response to COVID-19 and the recent winter storm?
So let's separate those. And when we say response to COVID-19, let me start with the vaccine, okay? The response to the vaccine has been phenomenal. Arlington has been, I'm telling you, stellar. I put Arlington to any other city on the face of the planet, like literally the work that the fire department has done, the work that the city has done to be able to vaccinate people. It is incredible. All of those people deserve the Purple Heart Award, right, for saving lives. I don't know how they can even make that better. Literally, it's just that good. Okay, so let's start there. Phenomenal. When it comes to the storm, that's a different story, right? And you know, on one end we can say, oh, it kind of came out of nowhere. You know, grandmama used to say, you know, plan for a rainy day because it's gonna rain. It's gonna rain. And so being prepared for that. And I think that there are some systems that need to be in place so that when the next disaster, whatever that is, happens, that we have better modes of communication, better way to mobility to move people around. I think that we've had enough chance to sit back and see what disaster looks like, and quite honestly, see the fail in other cities. We've seen that too many times for us not to be super prepared. And we've seen the fail that happened in New Orleans. Like, that was a fail. What a lot of people don't know is that the Red Cross had warned the mayor to, hey, if something happens, we can't come and get your people out of there. You need to do something different, and no plan was put in place. So I think that the communication plan needs to be put in place. An emergency response team needs to be better than what we currently have. And then, quite honestly, some of the optics need to change. And let me give you a perfect example. On the worst day that there was, God blessed us. We didn't lose power. We didn't lose water. It was great. So what we were doing is out helping other people. Okay. So we're out in the snow, going to neighborhoods, relocating children that are freezing to other places that are warm. And we went and we were picking up, this whole neighborhood was just dark. It was weird, you know, lights out and everything. And, you know, we went to pick up this family and we're relocating them. And they live across the street from the stadium. The stadium was lit up like a Christmas tree.
Exactly.
And I'm like, this looks bad.
Yes.
You know, now I picked up the phone, I called the mayor, I called the city council, we kind of talked through it in the whole nine. And to the because I was like, well, I had some interesting things to say. Yeah.
Me too.
Well, I said it to the people. So anyway, but to the Cowboys' credit, okay, here's what I found out. They actually offered the stadium. They offered it up. And there was a council that had been put together in the city of Arlington that thought that wasn't going to be a good idea. Okay? Now, I'm not going to come hard on the council right now. Okay? I won't for a couple of different reasons. And there are some things that we can discuss off camera as to if that was the right decision or not. But the optics, right? That looks bad. Literally, people are freezing to death. And the stadium is lit up like a Christmas tree. That looks bad, right? From a city, we don't need to be coming up with our response during a crisis. You know, you mentioned earlier, I'm from the IT side. This is what we did all the time. We were ready. If someone goes, like for example, I worked at DFW Airport, okay? If something happens at DFW Airport, if God forbid a terrorist attack, been through those drills a million times, to the point where they know what room to go to, everyone knows where to sit in the room, IT people and operation people up front, because those are like people that think like this, right? Well, all of that's already mapped out. We have something called site survivability. In other words, if this site goes down and all of our data is lost, do we have it backed up somewhere in another part of the world or something like that? Those types of contingency plans, right, are come up with and designed before the thing happens, right? You don't come up with it. For example, for those people that said, "Oh, it's snowing, let me go grab a generator," a little late.
Yeah.
A little late now. But for those people who had generators that automatically kick in whenever the power goes off in the house, they were taken care of.
Exactly.
Right? They stayed warm. Well, now let's bubble that thinking up to the city level, right? So that the city is prepared. I've seen some things happen. Prayerfully, it wasn't in Arlington, which was great. But we seen like, how does a power plant, how does a water plant, a water treatment plant lose power? Like, how do you not have 100 million backups for that? How was that? How did you not go through this scenario that you could lose power from that? I don't get that. But I think in general, I would say cities were caught off guard, but once again, it's gonna rain. Something else is gonna happen. You need to be ready from a city perspective to be prepared for it. So one of the things that I would say is we want to do better with our communication plan. You need to be able to reach out to every citizen in the city at the same time, right? So that you can get a message out to them and not requiring them to go somewhere else and maybe find your message, right? Let's do that beforehand so you have a way to be able to go there. Then you have two ways. You have a way for every citizen to contact you, like to let you know what's going on. This is the problem. Kids are freezing. People are freezing. We had to implement that ourselves. Hey, you're freezing. You need food. You need water. Let us know so we can get that stuff to you. We're not the city.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So the city has more resources to be able to do something like that. So if we can do it, surely you can do it at the city level. So I think that I'm not going to place blame on anybody from the city perspective saying, "Oh, well, you're just a horrible person." I think everybody was kind of scrambling and say, "Hey, how do we do the best we can?" This is, fair-minded people. But I am saying that now is the time to go into planning, saying what plans do we have in place that outlive an administration, right? That live on regardless of who's mayor and who's on city council. It doesn't make a difference, right? That these are the plans. When this type of emergency comes in, Plan A goes into place, right? This is our communication. This is what we say. This is who comes into board. This is physically where we go to be able to have the conversation. These are the people that get on the line. This is the way we communicate back to our citizens. This is the way the citizens communicate back into us, and this is how we monitor all of that. And this is how we begin to solve the problem. Done properly, a lot of that stuff doesn't need to be solved because you may have solved it to begin with.
Exactly.
Right? So, for example, when you go into a place, they'll have an evacuation plan on the wall. If you work in a corporate office, every now and then they will have a fire drill to say, if there's a fire, this is what you do. This is the route that you take out. Very few times has there ever been a fire where you are, but if it did happen, you've probably been through those drills. Right? So the same thing needs to happen from a city perspective, right? If and when a disaster happens, this is our plan. And so those things, now some of us there, but as we can see, not to the level that we needed to be.
Exactly. Awesome. All right, so disregarding the COVID-19 pandemic and winter storm, how do you feel about Jeff Williams' performance as mayor?
I judge a person by his heart, right? And I think Jeff's heart is in the right place, which is good. As mayor, you want to do a lot of things, and you always want to do more than you actually can do. Every leader is going to go through that. I know his heart is good. His heart is saying, I want to take care of the people of Arlington. And he's not there are some leaders that need you to know that they're the leader. He's not that. He's definitely not that. I remember the first time I met him, we were at a school speaking together. And, I showed up, I didn't know who I was going to speak with. So I showed up and I'm sitting at the table and I was kind of, you're kind of in your own world for a minute. You kind of come to. I didn't realize that the person I was sitting at the table with was the mayor of Arlington. Which, believe it or not, I've kept company with, a lot of different types of people, from royalty to presidents and the whole nine. And most of the time, people want you to know who they are.
Exactly.
That is, in my experience with him, is not him. So I appreciate it. Now, to say that I agree with everything is something different. But that is what it is. But his heart is definitely in the right place, and I appreciate that. I can't say that for all of the previous mayors of Arlington. I think some of them heart was in the exact wrong place. But I don't say that for Jeff. I think Jeff's heart was in the right. And to be honest with you, if it weren't for term limits, if he was running again, I wouldn't run against him.
All right. So, are you familiar with our new police chief, Al Jones?
Jones from Baltimore County. Yeah. What about it?
How do you think that he's done so far?
Here's the thing. So, for those that don't realize it, the chief of police is different than any other job in the police force. I've served as advisor to a lot of chiefs in my life, and quite honestly, some chiefs don't realize how different it is, because it is the job that is exposed, and at that point, it's not a police job; it is a political job, right? And so there's a shift that happens, and getting things done sometimes becomes increasingly more difficult, because you're not just worried about the police force, you've got to worry about the mayor and city council, you've got to worry about the public perception, all of these things, right? And so it is easy to get in that job and do nothing. It's easy. It's easier than you think, okay? It's easy because it's safe in some respects, okay? In the short time that he's been in place, he's already begun making changes, right? That requires bravery. When you talk about real leadership, true leadership, requires bravery. And let me tell you why. Because whenever you begin to make a change, some people will hate you just because of the change, even when the change benefits them. And so you have to make a change to say, I want to do this to benefit all people, knowing that you're going to be hated, but believing it's the right thing to do, sacrificing everything. Because here's the other thing. The chief of police is probably the easiest person to fire in the entire police department. They serve at the request of the mayor and city council. They can decide to make a change at any moment. And so being able to have that amount of bravery, plus I know the area that he came from. I lived in Baltimore for a little while. He's Baltimore County for him, but I lived in Baltimore, Pikesville, Maryland for a little while. So I know the area. I know where he came from. My family is still there. I know what he came from. I know what he used to seeing. And I appreciate that for a lot of reasons. But I'm watching the bravery that it takes to come in and in a short time say, I need to fix this, we want to do here. And he's open. There are chiefs are people too, and there are good chiefs, there are bad chiefs. It's like there are good leaders and there are bad leaders. There are transformative leaders, and then there are people who just want to toe the line, right? There are, blockhead chief of police, and there are opening, willing chief of police. And I've met all kinds, right? And he's a guy that is open to suggestions. Well, I just spoke with someone, a citizen yesterday, and she had a particular issue, and I'm like, that's a valid issue. I'm going to tell you what we need to do about this, and while you're at it, make sure to contact our new chief regarding it. I think this will be something that you need to bring to his attention, and he's open to that. I mean, I'm telling you, he's a different kind of guy. I like him. I like him.
Alrighty, so win or lose this election, do you see yourself involved in politics in the future?
So I will say this. So I ran for office 22 years ago, okay? And the reason that I ran then was not because I was interested in politics. I ran because literally the city asked me to run. I had went before the city council, telling them about some things, about some youth organizations that we're bringing to the area. The city council asked me, why would I ever want to deal with kids at all, ever? That's pointless. And the city, including the city secretary, called me, said, look, we need you to run for city council. You see what we're dealing with. And I ran in that city, youngest ever run, and I remember somebody having because I was the youngest ever run, we got a lot of press around it and stuff. And someone asked me, isn't this a good thing? I said, no, it's a horrible thing. I said, why is it horrible? and at the time I was 24. I said, a 24-year-old running for city council is absolutely horrible. I said, our seniors, our elders should be running the city. I said, our legs are young. We should be doing the work of it, right? I said, if you see me involved, there's something wrong, right? From a politic perspective, if you see me involved in politics, like running for an office, that means something's wrong. I don't just get involved with it just because I have nothing else to do. Something's wrong that needs to be righted. Now I talked to my team. My team has some extreme aspirations for me. They would love for me to go on to see all types of things. But I will say this, that if you see, there are people who just run for office to run for office, okay? That's not me. If you see my name on the ballot, pay attention. Whether you vote for me or not, you need to pay attention, because the only reason Dewayne Washington's name is on the ballot is that something is wrong. Something is real wrong that needs to be fixed. Not saying that I'm the only person on the ballot that can fix it. It just means you need to wake up and figure out what that issue and problem is, because otherwise I would not be running. So if you see me running for this office or any other office, it's because something's wrong. Now, as far as being active, I'm always active. I'm just active in the places where there are no cameras. So people will say, well, yeah, we give to the food bank. That's great. Tell me the lady's name on the front desk. Right? Tell me one person's name that you dealt with in the homeless shelter that you were able to get out and put on a right track. Because that's what we do all the time, right? But there's no cameras there, right? And there's no awards and things for that. There's so we're on the front line fighting on a daily basis. Whenever you see my name bubble up to something, it's usually because something is wrong somewhere. We need to raise awareness for it. Other than that, all the things people talk about, like that's what we're physically doing on a daily basis. So once again, if you see my name, pause, go to my whatever I'm running from, go to my page and find out what the real issue is. Because I'm not running just because I need to see my name on the title. I don't need to see that at all.
So speaking of you being 24 and running for office, we talked a little bit earlier about voting and youth and being involved in everything. Why do you think it's important that younger people are involved inside of voting?
I would say as a younger person, first of all, turn that question on its head. Why do you think people are trying to get you to not vote? Why do you think there is being when we talk about voter suppression, we don't have to figure out if it's real or not. People are being removed from the voting rolls. Why do you think, why would someone spend their time, effort, and money to say, let's figure out who we can remove from the voting rolls? Someone's scared of something, and it's your voice. Your voice is the strong. Politicians have no power without the people, period. And the vote is the great equalizer. It's the one thing that equalizes everybody. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your background is, what state you came from, what family you came from, whether it's the Williams or the Rockefellers. It doesn't make a difference. Everybody's vote is equal. That means, check this out, a crackhead and a CEO, when it comes to voting, are equal. It is the only thing in our society that has equalized us. There's nothing else that's done that. Schools are not equal, jobs are not equal, none of that's equal. The vote is equal. And there are people that want you to think that your vote doesn't matter, your vote doesn't count. I talked to a young person the other day who was like, you know what, I never voted because I just don't believe in going for the lesser of two evils. Or I hadn't found somebody I'd agree with 100%. You're not going to agree with yourself 100%. But if you don't vote, you don't have a voice. And I said, I want you to think about something. Who convinced you that your vote doesn't matter? It's probably somebody who didn't want you to vote, period. And when you figure out how much your vote impacts everything else, I'm going to be honest with you. We wouldn't have the Congress that we have if everyone paid attention and voted. We wouldn't have the House or the when you look at even at state level, the House and the Congress, you wouldn't have that.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't have the Senate. You wouldn't have, if everyone really paid attention. And I'm telling you, because I've been there. I've seen and met these people. I've spent time with these people. There's no way in the world a lot of them will be there if people were paying attention and voting. But if they can keep 95% of the people ignorant and making them think that their vote doesn't count, then they can walk through every single time, period.
And I feel like we see that too in Arlington as well, since we don't have, you know, a lot of people voting, as we see who's in council, who's in office, or anything like that. So
whatever goes.
Yeah.
Let's make a deal.
Yeah.
Let's make a backroom deal,
Mm-hmm.
right? A big election, a big mayoral election in Arlington, a big one,
Mm-hmm.
is 17,000 people.
Mm.
There are 402,000 people in Arlington.
Yes.
17,000 is a big election.
Mm-hmm.
10,000 votes wins the mayoral election out of 402,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
About half of those being of voting age. Think about that. So if we're looking at 180, 200,000 people and that's less than 5%.
Mm-hmm.
That's ridiculous, right? But if you think that your vote doesn't count, you won't cast it.
Mm-hmm.
If you think, oh, my only option is the lesser of two evils, you can vote for whoever you want to. People don't realize this. You vote for, if there's somebody in your community, even in this race, if you're listening here, even in this mayoral race, if there's somebody in your community that you feel is a better fit, that you feel has the voice of the community, and this guy or this gal would make an excellent mayor, write their name in.
Mm-hmm.
If 10,000 people did that, that person would be the next mayor. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I'd be okay with it, because at the end of the day, I don't, even though I've been endorsed, but you never hear me talk about the people, the organizations I've been endorsed by. I don't talk about that, because organizations don't vote, period. People vote. And whenever I have your endorsement, I know, because I'm gonna see the vote come through. That's the only endorsement I care about, because those are the people that we're going to represent. Not some type of union where most of those people don't even live in Arlington that are over that union. It's the individual people that live here and will be impacted by the things that you do. So once again, if you think your vote counts for a lot of stuff, because there's a direct correlation with your local government and the effects over your own life. And so when you understand that correlation, then you'll understand, I need to pay attention. I need to, and on top of that, not only voting, all of those people, the city council, you hear me say, when I seen something happen, I called up the city council. I know those people. I called up the mayor. I know them. Why can I do that? Because I understand that they work for me, period. Whether you voted for that person or not, that person works for you. They represent you. You get on the phone and you call. I'm going to give a shout out to a friend of mine. She's not running. She's already in council, but I just love her to death. Ruby Faye, okay? I was talking to Ruby Faye yesterday. She called me. She said, Dewayne, we want to do this food drive, and I want to feed these people over here. They're having problems, and da, da, da. I said, Ruby, you got it. We got the food. We got you covered. Don't worry about it. She said, no, but I just want to make sure that these people, and she said these words. The reason I'm calling her out, she said, Dewayne, my name don't even have to be on it. I just want to make sure they got food. See, that's a leader, right? That's a leader versus some other things that
Yes,
you see, right?
sure.
And so whenever you're looking for leadership, like that's what you should be looking for. And what she's saying is, I work for y'all. I serve y'all. There's a guy on my he's on my campaign team. He's actually my campaign manager, which is crazy because he used to be my CIO at the DFW airport. And you talk about leadership styles, right? His leadership style is phenomenal. He would come in, he's a CIO, he's over all technology at one of the most technological advanced airports in the world. And he would come into a staff meeting and he would say, have y'all met my boss over here, right? And it's his assistant, his secretary. That's what he called it. I work for her. It's funny, my assistant, I tell her the whole time, I say, I'm working for you. I need you to know this. Like, I'm working for you and George. George is her dog. I said, I'm working for you and George. I need to make sure, and quite honestly, we all working for George. Make sure George is taken care of and George is fed, right?
Exactly.
But his mentality toward leadership, I wish everybody could get in every level of leadership. You've seen an org chart before.
Mhm.
It has a person up here, then the person, and then the person. His org charts were inverted.
Hmm.
So whenever you looked at his org chart, you seen he was at the bottom. He said, I'm the least important person in this whole organization. I exist to support you. I exist to remove issues and problems out of your way. And his org chart, flipped upside down, represented that. If more leaders thought like that, and more citizens understood that, all of y'all work for us, I think we'd have a different government.
Exactly, for sure. Alrighty, so speaking more about our state government as well, on March the 2nd, Governor Greg Abbott announced that he was rescinding the mask mandate and capacity restrictions in the state of Texas. What are your thoughts on the governor's response and announcement?
So when I deal with politicians at that level, a lot of people will look at their actions and judge their actions, right? What you have to look at is judge the intent, right? And let me tell you why that's important. At that level, the one thing that I've seen important to all of those politicians is one thing: being reelected. Screw data, screw everything else. It doesn't have anything to do with any of those things, right? Being reelected. Why did he do that? Because in Texas, he started getting pressure from all of the people saying, we don't want to wear masks. We want our stuff opened up. We want this. We want the loud few, right, that call the governor's office, that understand that the governor works for them. Okay, if everybody understood that, once again, we'd have different government, right? But there are a few people that do understand it, and they're extremely loud. Okay, and so what you saw is a direct result of those people being extremely loud, saying this is what we want you to do. It is not a result of him saying, I think this is the best thing to do. Back to bravery when it comes to leadership. Okay, bravery says, I'm going to do the right thing when no one's looking, even when it's not popular. I'm going to do the right thing even when I'm going to be talked about and looked at bad about it. You might as well, because people will talk about you anyway, right? And unfortunately, once again, at that level, and I spent a lot of time at that level, right? At the federal level, the one thing is important is reelection and political gains, which, by the way, is why I believe personally in term limits all the way up, from our senators all the way down. So our senators in Washington all the way down. You do that, then you have a different situation, right? No, people are not worried about posturing to win the next election. They're not worried about how this looks from an optic perspective. They can just do the right thing by the citizens, right? And I think that in general, our response to the pandemic nationwide, okay, nationwide, has not been one that's rooted and grounded in let's do what's right for the people. Okay, now I've been in London in Parliament while Parliament was in session and seen the way that these people argue or discuss issues. Same way I've been here in the United States, here in DC, seeing the same thing. When you see both of them, okay, you understand very quickly the stark difference. Now, it might just been the day that I was there, but I'm watching these people in London in Parliament argue, and you can tell that every single one of those people were on the side of the people. Every one of them. Every argument brought up, you can just tell the heart, like, you know, this is, every one of the arguments, they're all good arguments, but they were all from the sides of the people, right? In DC, this bill that they're presenting, they don't even call it writing a bill anymore. They call it sponsoring a bill because most of them don't write bills. Private industry will bring the bill. Here is the bill, right? And the argument is not from the point of the people, it's the point of the lobbyists that paid you to be able to say whatever. And once again, but if we all voted and paid attention and we had term limits so that you can't do that for 40 years, right? We would change that out. We would get fresh blood. We would get new ideas all the time. But it's the intentional voter apathy that has been put upon our society and make us believe that the people really don't have the power. A friend of mine told me this. He said, here in London, the politicians are scared of the people. He said in America, the people are afraid of the politicians.
Exactly. Got to flip that around. Alrighty, so moving into some more community-based questions. Most of East Arlington is made up of Black and Hispanic people. How can leadership prevent gentrification while still making sure the area receives needed renovations?
First of all, you start caring. Okay, the first thing you gotta do is care about it. Remember, I come from one of those places that were regentrification is hitting. That's where I come from, right? So I am very familiar with it. So here's what happens though. Cities start catering to developers, right? Let's give the developer a good deal to go in and pretty much rape the area, okay? Because that's what happens. So first of all, you've got to care about the people, okay? And care about them in a way so that they know they're cared about. So I won't name the city, okay? But I can show you cities where things began to happen in the city, streets began to get fixed, bike lanes started to be put in, and I went to that city and told the citizens, they're not doing this for you. I want you to know this. This is not happening for you. I need you to, you got a couple of years to get your stuff straight because here's what's happening. Unfortunately, I can't stop it. Oh, Dewayne, it's not gonna happen. People been talking about that for years. Listen, they're not spending this money on you. I wish they were, but they're not. Trust me. 2 years later, they're all gone. Okay? Regentrify the whole area. And there are people who see regentrification as a good thing. You got to realize that. Like when we talk about it, we talk about from a horrible perspective. There are people that say, no, that's a positive. That's what we want to do. That's a wonderful thing. So what you come in, you got to come in and number one, care about the people. That's the first thing. Okay, care about the people, and then start supporting infrastructure. You care about their school, so you come in and help. I'm gonna tell you a lie that I was told that has hurt communities all over, especially communities of color that allow regentrification to happen. They told us, make your money and get out the hood. That's what they told us. Okay, some of y'all are a product. Some of y'all young people are a product of your parents making the money and getting out the hood. Okay, you know what nobody told us? Make your money and then make the hood better. What happens when we leave the hood? We leave it vulnerable. As a little girl told me one time, she said, Dewayne, you know, if I seen my neighbor, if I seen her get up and go to her doctor's office and work as a doctor and practice every day, I might want to be a doctor. She said, my across street neighbor, if I seen her go to work as a lawyer in her lawyer office every day and practice law, I might want to be a lawyer. She said, but that ain't what I see every day. That ain't the part that got me. She said, and when they do become doctors and lawyers, they move away from me. There's no incentive to be able to stay there, right? Because there's nothing there. But when we've all seen what a city can do when it cares about an area, okay? I was walking in our entertainment district the other day. Oh, it's beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, wonderful. This is the example of what you can do whenever you put your mind to it. So if we can build billion-dollar buildings, surely we can build a community. But we have to want to.
Exactly.
So that means mentorship in the area. That means fixing infrastructure. That means not over-policing the area and making these people feel like they live in a police state. All of those things together to lift those people up and to give them the area to reinvest in their own area, right? I've heard so many times before that, you know, people see riots and they say, oh, these black people are rioting. They're tearing up their own stuff. No, they're not. That's not their stuff. That's part of the issue. That's not theirs, right? But giving them the ability to reinvest inside their own communities to help make communities better, instead of ignoring them until some developer says we want to come in and clear the spot and I don't know, build a stadium there, right? That's not the time to get involved. Let's get involved long before then.
Awesome. So speaking of building, aside from COVID relief, what are some plans that you have to help small business across Arlington? So
I own a small business, right? So I'm a little privy to this. And so I think that in general, the city can be a better partner to not only small businesses, but other small organizations as well. So for example, when you look at our spending with minority-owned companies, black-owned companies, from a city contractual perspective, it's abysmal. It's ridiculous. If I said the number out loud, you wouldn't believe me. I didn't believe it when I first saw it. When you look at dealing with, someone had mentioned, we were on the call with NAACP the other day, they had mentioned working with the Black Contractors Association. And while they were talking, I'm like, wait a minute, a friend of mine runs that whole organization. Let me text her and ask her, how has Arlington been as a partner to you? Her response was terrible. It's been a terrible partner, right? In most of these things, believe it or not, the will to do it and the care is where it starts. Care about small businesses. That'll give you the will to do it. You'll come up with all different types of, I mean, I have a million different ideas around it, but it starts with just caring, right? Caring enough to say, you know what, we have these small businesses around, things have changed, COVID is around, so what we're gonna do, we're going to sponsor, right? People come in and show you some ways to be able to pivot your company. Okay, we'll sponsor that. We'll take care of you. You know, now you're moving to Zoom, and once again, this is cool when you have a city with no debt. Okay, you say, you know what, for all the small companies that want to apply for it, we're going to give you a year of free Zoom, and the city's going to take care of that because you trying to figure out how to pivot and be able to do business, you know, online. We're going to have some online training for you from people that actually do this on a regular basis, right? And being able to reach out to them to do it. Now, here's a kicker, okay? I own several businesses. I've never had the city reach out to me for nothing. Not our city, for nothing. There are other cities that actually want to give me awards and hold on and all this kind of stuff. And people will say, well, they didn't know you. I was Man of the Year on the front page of the paper. I run an international youth organization. If you don't know me, you surely don't know the individual that we're trying to help. If I'm unknown, you're not looking at all. And so it starts with just caring enough, right? Because if you care enough, you're going to listen and figure out what they need. A friend of mine called me the other day. He's got a restaurant, he's got a bar in Arlington. He's like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. I have no idea. I have no clue, right? I'm saying, and here's what I told him. Hey, I'm going to sit down with you. We can come up with some other ideas for your bar to be able to repurpose and do some things that you may not have thought about before, right? It would be great if the city could do that and not Dewayne Washington as an individual. Or partner with organizations to do that and bring it to all the, you know, all the businesses that are in Arlington because we had to register in Arlington, right? But there's no, I don't, as a small business owner, I don't see that happening, right? I don't see it happening with my business. No one has reached out to me and said, hey, what can we do to help? I haven't had that.
All right, so speaking into some more musical questions, you mentioned earlier that you played the saxophone. So the city.
I still play it.
Oh yeah.
I'm playing it Sunday, as a matter of fact. We're having a benefit concert right here. Y'all are all invited.
Oh, thank you. All right, so the city of Arlington is known for supporting some local artists, for example, Maren Morris, and then we just saw Mickey Guyton on the Grammys as well. Maren Morris received a proclamation actually from Mayor Jeff Williams. How could popular artists from Arlington's hip hop culture, such as Splurge, Cincy Molly, Nojo Wallace, Gucci Boy Melv, Newbie Mac, I mean the list goes on and on here that we have. How can hip hop artists receive the same support from the city?
So it's the same thing, right? So it's diversity of all levels, right? Because you gotta know, right? So, you know, here in Arlington, you got Kirk Franklin, who we went to school together, Grammy Award winning. Right? I used to sit on the Grammy board as well. There's a lot of people right there in the city that are doing some wonderful things. When you have diversity of all levels, people know that, right? And when I say diversity, I'm not just talking about the color of the skin. I'm talking about all backgrounds. I'm talking about all creeds of individuals coming in, because just as we're talking about hip hop artists, there may be some Korean artists that are just as good and need notoriety as well. But that's when it comes to understanding and embracing an entire city, right? There's over 100 languages spoken in Arlington, for example, right? Understanding what that means. You know, when I've got I got a running joke, like a lot of the donut shops in Arlington are owned by people from South Korea, you know. So when I come into a donut shop, I start speaking Korean to them, and it's a good way to get hot donuts, you know. But understanding, right, the different cultures that are there and having them have a seat at the table, that will take care of that naturally. Because just like you're talking about hip hop, the reason that it's not there is that it doesn't have the visibility at that level. But there's somebody else that we're not mentioning, maybe an Indian group that's just off the chain, or a rap artist from Nigeria rapping in Yoruba that we have never heard of, but having the right people at the table allows that to bubble up. I think what's happened, and it's happened with several different cities, not only with Arlington, is that as it emerged, it didn't emerge to allow enough diversity of thought in the leadership area of the city. And I'm not bashing Mayor Williams for not doing it. I'm saying that we can only know what we know, which is why we surround ourselves with diversity, right? Because somebody, I have women on my team that look at things differently than I look at. It's like, Dewayne, did you ever think about this? I'm like, I'm not a woman. I never would have thought about it. I didn't even know. I never, you think about the bathroom from this perspective. I've never been in a woman's bathroom. I didn't realize that, So that diversity of thought is what's needed. So not only just from a musical perspective, but that begins to impact the entire community. So everybody feels like, this is my city. I got a stake in this city. I believe in the city. Why? Because the city believes in me, because I have a seat at the table, because I have a voice. So just having that diversity of thought will bring that around different ages that are there, right? So one thing, for example, if I asked you as a young person, tell me about our Meals on Wheels program. You're like, I don't get Meals on Wheels. I mean, I might eat at the fast food joint in my car. Is that Meals on Wheels? And I can tell you that, they're serving one part of Arlington, would like to serve the rest, and all we need to do is just say yes to be able to serve the rest of our seniors. If I didn't have any seniors around me, I never would have known that. If I didn't have anybody around me that's on staff at the Meals on Wheels program, I wouldn't know that. So having that diversity and listening to those people, that's important. You can't just have them around for show, right? You've got to listen to them so that everybody has a seat at the table. We'll handle that problem, not just from a musical perspective, but across the board.
Do you listen to any hip hop at all? Have any favorite artists or songs, anything?
So this will trip you out. So you heard it here first. We haven't announced it. Okay. We haven't announced it at all. But we got a song coming out.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm gonna reserve that till you hear the song,
okay.
And then you'll probably know.
Are you rapping or anything on it?
I'm not telling you this yet.
Okay.
So for me, we go way back in hip hop. Matter of fact, I'm telling my age here. A lot of the old Snoop and Dre and all that stuff. If you listen real close, and I won't even tell you what it is, but if you listen real close, I'm on some of those.
Oh.
Yeah. Back in the day.
Oh, you were in the studio.
Back in the day, way back in the day. So, that's all. I won't divulge everything because we got a little surprise coming out. But you heard it here first.
That's an Arlington Urban exclusive.
Arlington Urban exclusive. Matter of fact, I tell you what, we'll send it to y'all first.
Okay.
Once it's done. And so anyway, that's all I'll say about that right now.
Nice.
I love hip. I will say that. I love hip hop. I think hip hop is being hijacked. I will say that. And because I say all the time, if I can control what you see and what you can hear, to some degree I can control how you think, right? And so there's a whole nother section, a whole nother show we can talk about regarding controlling of thought through music and through entertainment.
All right, so moving into some questions about the Arlington Unity Council study. According to the study, Black people were pulled over by Arlington police and ticketed about 37.5% of the time, even though Black people make up less than 23% of the population. If elected as mayor, how can you solve this problem?
So, first of all, you've got to believe the numbers, right? And not only do I believe those numbers, I believe those numbers are probably higher than that. And let me tell you why they're higher than that. That deals with one aspect of it, the pulling over, which is good. Okay. When I first moved to Arlington, I got followed every day. Every day, same cop car, every day. You know what that does to a young man? Every day, right? Those statistics won't speak to that. The interactions that you have that are not positive, they don't speak to that at all. And so when it comes to, here's the thing, is this new for anyone? Were you surprised when you read that?
No.
You know, because and here's part of the issue. Like I sit down with police officers and they will tell me that's not the truth. And here's what I explain to them. There's a couple of things that I explain to them. Because usually when I'm talking to a police officer, he's a good guy. And here's what I explain to them. If you're a law-abiding citizen and you grew up where I grew up, we never meet you because we're not doing anything wrong to begin with. We only meet the bad guy because we're not doing anything wrong. And he represents you, or she. And if you want to know what that's like, because one of them said to me one time, well, you know, but I'm a good guy. They have positive interaction with me, so that should change things. You've been treated like crap for 18 years. You think one interaction with you is going to change everything? If a woman has been beat by her husband every single time he raises his hand, and one day he goes to hug her and raise his hand, she's going to flinch. What you're seeing is a whole community flinch. And it's like, yeah, but you know, it's only few and far between. I said, you know what? Let me ask you this. Laura, do you like cookies? You like chocolate chip cookies?
Yeah.
They're my favorite pie. Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you this. So if I had some warm chocolate chip cookies here, and I offered you one, would you eat that?
Yeah, I take like one.
Yeah, you take one or two.
Yeah.
What if before I gave them to you, I said, Lauren, I gotta be honest, before you eat those cookies, my dog got into them. He dropped a little poop in the batter, just a little bit. And it kind of got mixed up in there and it got cooked. The chances that your cookie has poop probably low, but I got to tell you, there's some poop in the batter somewhere. You still eating that cookie?
No, not
But you love cookies, okay? But if you want me to get you to eat that cookie, I got to get the poop out first. If you want us to love the entire police office, the entire police force, then get the poop out, period. Right? And we know the poop is there. What's happening is that people are saying, oh, it doesn't happen. It doesn't exist. It happens and it exists, and we're still here that it happened too. So you can't have programs that just have people in proximity with police officers and you still get, the poop is still in it. That doesn't work, right? And here's the kicker. When you sit down with police officers, behind the scenes, not out in the open, most of them know where the poop is. We've got to implement programs that do two things. Number one, stop the poop from being able to join to begin with, right? We see the issue with, was it Tamir Rice, the little boy that got shot? That dude shot him in less than 2 seconds. He was dead. They fired him. They didn't fire him for killing the boy. They fired him because he lied on his resume. But here's the thing. That dude had been released from the previous police department because of mental issues. They said, this dude is not mentally fit to carry a gun. And you hire him. That's a deficiency. We need to resolve that deficiency, right? So number one is they don't get on the force. Number two, when they are on the force, we have ways of removing them, okay? I was talking with a group of officers one day and I was explaining to them, or trying to put into words, what fear looks like. When you see a police officer, the fear that comes up, not the uncomfortability, the fear. This could end my life. Not because you think, because they're like, oh, well, TV is done. No. We're not talking about television. We're talking about experience. You think George Floyd was the first dude with a knee on his neck? We all experienced that. We're talking about what we know, what we have experienced, not what television has shown us. So don't tell us that our experience is wrong, because we experienced it. We've been through it. We've done it. So there's fear that's there. And they asked me, said, do you still feel that fear? Not now. They're like, yeah, well, you know, you grew out of it now. I said, no, that's not what happened. I can call chiefs of police now and get the problem solved. And I've had to do that a couple of times, unfortunately. In other words, having access is what relieved that fear. period. I'm still cautious, don't get me wrong. I'm not rude to a police officer. People just doing their job, especially if I've done something wrong. I'm being very, very cordial, and I teach other folks how to do this. We've been commended for our programs in Gentlemen's Society when we teach young men how to get pulled over. And as we were talking with some other police officers about that program, they commended that. That's great. And I let them know that all of these things that we teach kids to do, whether, slow down, put your blinker on, turn the inside light on if it's dark, keep your hands easy. All of these things, they're all to make sure that the officer that pulls you over is at ease and comfortable, because we don't want him excited. I said, show me the program that teaches you how to have the citizens at ease and comfortable, so they're not afraid of losing their life on this deal. Show me that. So putting programs in place, number one, to stop those people from getting in, because believe it or not, there are some people who target the police force specifically to come in and mess with us. We know this. This is not conspiracy. We know that to be fact. Two, there are situations where there's interactions that are, because sometimes we're seen differently, seen as a threat for whatever reason. And here's a perfect example. I talked about Ruby Faye. We helped Ruby Faye on her campaign. And one day I told Ruby, I said, hey, I'm gonna be your driver for today. I don't want you to have to think about nothing. I'm gonna drive you around. Just so happened we were meeting with the police department that day. So we get there, we go inside, and we're listening to the police speak. And it wasn't too long after the George Floyd situation. And they mentioned that could never happen here in Arlington. I didn't say anything. Ruby said, Dewayne, tell them what happened to you just outside the front door in the parking lot, just now. I said, well, I pull up, I'm dressed nice, I'm in a nice car. I don't think I look like a threat. Now maybe I do look like a thug, I don't know. But to me, I don't think that, I don't think anyone would confuse me for a thug. So we pull up to the front of the police station. The police, the cones are coned up in front of the door. We don't know how to get in now. So I let my window down. I pull up to a police officer that's outside, trying to ask him how we get in. And he goes for his gun. Now, if you're doing that to me, who I'm educated, I've got the right words to say to bring you down. I don't mean you any nefarious actions or in any ill will or intent. I have been trained. If you're doing this with me, I feel sorry for the guy who does look like a thug, quote unquote. Braids in his hair, pants hanging down off his butt, and may not have the correct words to say to you. Oh, he's definitely a threat. And so some of the issue is how we are perceived. Now that's a bigger conversation, right? But in the context of police, how we are perceived is important for a couple of different reasons, right? Because it dictates the actions. Lauren, if I was to tell you, I got a cousin who is on trial for murder, okay? One day, same day, killed his mom, his dad, and his brother. And he did it, like there's no question, he did it. And I say, hey, he's getting ready to come and join us. Are you comfortable with that dude joining us and he's on trial for murder?
I mean, I don't know if you want me to answer this question, because I don't judge books by their cover and everything.
That ain't the cover, he did it. This is not, he admitted, I killed all of them, same day, okay? You would feel a certain way about, and he's sitting right there. You would feel a certain way, we all would. And back to your, cover and perception, I appreciate that. But if I was to say he walked in and his dad was pistol whooping his mom, and he was trying to grab the gun from his dad, gun went off, shot his mom. And the dad was coming at him, he was trying to shoot his dad, he missed, hit his brother coming into the front door, and then the dad kept coming, he shot and killed his dad. Different story now. Right?
Exactly.
Now, you can be right here and you're like, man, how is it? Same dude, same action, it's just perception.
And that's why I'm like, I don't judge, because I know people that you can say, he looks like a thug, you know what I mean? But he's probably the smartest one in the room, you know what I mean? And now here he is being harassed by police and, you know, has his life ended by police as well for how he looks. So.
Right. And if everybody thought like you, we would not have those statistics, right? So the other thing to have is, and the council mentioned this, but I want to go a little bit further. What we need is, when we talk about access, information flowing back and forth, is a group of citizens who are responsible for nefarious actions and interactions by the police that are not subject to the police, right? I've been on the councils where the council was part of the police. Well, you know, let me just tell you how absurd that sounds, and let's go outside of the United States and let's go to Nazi Germany. And imagine that there is a council being set up by the Nazis that says, hey, you can report any type of nefarious actions or ill will or anything that's happening at a death camp, you can report that to us, and we'll review that from the Nazi Party perspective. Does that make sense to you?
No, not at all.
Right. So, right. And so the same thing happens, and so you have these councils that are subject to the, and please don't get this wrong. I'm not saying that the police are Nazi Germany, right? I'm just saying that we need an oversight committee that is outside of the jurisdiction of the whole department that you're checking out, right? That just makes sense. Plus, remember where I grew up, like, you don't call the police on the police. That doesn't work. It's never worked for us. If it did, we would not have these statistics, okay? So a way for someone to call and say, hey, this was my interaction with Officer so-and-so. It'll become apparent very quickly where the poop is, because you'll see 15 of those in a week. And we've done that in other, there's other police departments we worked with, and when we start reviewing some tapes and you're like, yeah, the chief will say, yeah, this guy's just a butthole. Well, why is he still allowed to go out and spread, you know, gloom and doom all over the place, right?
Exactly. Gotta
get the poop out. And how you do that, you have a council of citizens that citizens can feel comfortable talking to. They can report to there. And those citizens can get information from the citizens, from other citizens that have been done wrong. They can also contact the police department, that people who are aware, just like we had to be trained, aware of what police policies and procedures are. So you can separate from, here's an officer that broke policy that needs some reprimand, or here's a policy or procedure that we need to change. Because believe it or not, a lot of what people can stop you and do to you is within the law. A lot of, more than you actually think, is within the law. And so it's not that maybe that particular officer needs to change, it's the policy and procedure around it needs to be able to change. So those are the things that we need. So we need, first of all, care. And I appreciate them putting that together and creating that. Second of all, acknowledging that it's real, right? Because there are people who will come back and say, well, no, you know, they do most of the crime, or no, if you've seen what I see, understand the whole interaction, the big picture, that how we've criminalized people, right? Understand all of that. Implementing things in those areas that help them to have alternatives helps as well. And then allowing them to be able to have access so that somebody can call and say, this is what happened to me. I have citizens calling saying, my son was shot and killed by the police. They won't even acknowledge it. They left him for dead, would not render aid, and they won't even acknowledge that it happened. In Arlington, by the way.
Treshun Miller.
There you go.
That's my friend.
Yeah, there you go. And what I told his mom, I said, here's what I focus on. Not that interaction. Look at the interaction before. When the cops beat him up for no reason, took him to the hospital and just left him. See, there's no report on that.
In 2017.
There you go. You already know.
Yeah.
Okay? No report. See, we always look at the end, oh, this gunplay. Look at what happened. Look at how you get there. Mm-hmm. And at that point, you're scared of the police. Remember, we talked about fear. What do you do when you're scared, right? Fight or flight. What do you do when you're fearful? Well, what caused him to be fearful? And that's what we're not paying attention to, because that doesn't show up on a statistic, right? That in all of those columns that you looked at, beating somebody for not doing anything was not in one of the columns, was. But that's a contributing factor. So first of all, we got to care, stop the people from coming in, have a mechanism to get rid of the people when they're there. And here's the thing, to be honest with you, like I said, a lot of them know where the poop is. Let's have a mechanism to be able to rectify that within the police department as well. Not only outside of it, but inside of it as well. So we got to implement all of those things together so that our good, we say it all the time, and it is true, the majority, overwhelming majority of police are phenomenal people putting their lives on the line every day, being asked to do more than what they should be asked to do. We ask them to be a counselor and a judge and all of these other things, like a father, and you need to, part of the bomb squad. All of these things we're expecting them to do is really not even part of their job. A teacher and all. We shouldn't be doing that to begin with, but on top of that, most of them are good, decent people. And the problem comes here is the person that's been harassed for 18 years, that is tired of it, that is tired of being scared, is tired of being fearful, he can get approached by a good police officer. And that good police officer is going to get it for 18 years of what the bad police officer did. So we need to fix that.
Awesome.
Thank y'all for letting me talk. I appreciate it. I know it's a lot, but we can get it all out.
Exactly. Alrighty, so let's see. We'll move into some educational questions as well. What are your stances on alternative paths for students who don't wish to pursue a college degree?
I think that, well, let me tell you this, and this will probably answer your question. When I was going to college, I frustrated all of my counselors because they were always trying to put me on a degree plan. And I said, I don't want to be on a degree plan. They said, why not? I said, I don't plan on getting a degree. They said, why are you going to school? I said, I'm going to school for knowledge and education. They were like, that don't make sense. I said, that's what makes me not respect your degree then. If going to school for knowledge and education is not the purpose, then why are you here? Right? Then this piece of paper means nothing if that's what you're saying. I believe in education, right? However you get it, I believe in that. I told my teachers, I said, when I'm done learning here, you know, I'll leave and come back when I want to learn some more. Period. I take that approach with my own children, and they pretty much have that same mentality. They can go, they cannot. You can go, you can learn. I'm all about education, though. I'm all about learning, but that learning comes in a lot of different forms, as you can see, like with your peers that are coming out of college, you know, with $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in debt, to go get a job they could have got without a degree. It's like, well, why did I spend this time in school? And I think your generation is starting to see, we talked about BS Mountain over here, right? That's automatic is not true. But knowledge and education is. Knowledge and education will take you far, a long way. But you have to actually have knowledge and education, not just I checked the box and I went to the school. So I'm all for whatever types of alternative, and I don't even call it alternative education. Education is education. So for example, my son wants to be a firefighter, okay? He doesn't have to go to college to be a firefighter. Go get the schooling that you need and the education you need to become a firefighter. I say all the time, if you want to be a clown, go to clown school. Don't go to Harvard. You're about to waste a lot of money. Go be, I'm a musician, so people say, oh, go get a real job. Same people that say go get a real job are paying $1,000 to go see Beyonce.
True.
I remember I've done gigs before and made 10 grand in an hour. What real job you got? It's gonna make you $10,000 in an hour. Yeah. Show me that one. And I think so. It's all valid, right? Education is valid. You might call a plumber. Do you care that plumber has a degree in whatever? You don't care. I need you to fix these pipes. You go see Beyonce in concert. Do you care if she has a degree in music? No, I need you to entertain and dance real well. And so when it comes down to it, what we care about is the end result, right? Now, that's not to say I'm knocking formal education. I'm not. I am to say that it's not the only path. And to make people think it's the only path, I think it's doing them an injustice.
All right, so moving into some housing questions. Apartments and rental rates in Arlington have increased over the past decade. If elected, how could you make housing or affordable housing a priority?
Yeah, so we're back to the same question. Debt, that's why they've gone up, right? If a city's debt-free, they can offset that, and it doesn't go up, right? So same reason that not only apartments, but housing rents have gone up. Why? Because the person who owns that house, their rates have gone up, and so now to be able to offset that, they have to charge more for the rentals, right? So it's a cascading effect. It's the same thing. And it goes back to the same two things. Number one, reducing debt. Right, so it reduces the demand that you need on your citizens. Not sexy to talk about, but you see how it cascades into everything else. Number two, same thing, you gotta care. When you care, you say, we can bring in more affordable housing. That's not a hard thing to do. There are people who have been trying to get into Arlington to build more affordable housing. They keep getting turned away, okay? So to do it is not difficult, you just have to care and do it. Now, here's the thing to remember, back to debt. If you're paying less for that house, you're paying less a year in taxes. The city is making less money. Back to debt. See, all these things are kind of going back to the same place. If you have a home that is worth $3 million and a home that is worth $100,000, they can take up the same plot of land. They can use the same space. But one of them, the city is going to get paid a whole lot more for. Okay, because when you pay those taxes on that house, it's going to come out to 20 times more than over here. And we need money, so let's go over here. So how do I plan on doing that? Number one is really looking at partnering with those people that bring in true affordable housing, so that people can actually get those grown kids out of their house, right? So they can, those 24, 25, 26-year-old kids, so that they can afford to live out on their own. I moved out of my own when I was 18 in Arlington, okay? Those same apartments that I moved in now cost as much as my house. You know what I'm saying? Same apartments, same place. So to be able to build places for kids that are coming out of college for them to actually live, as well as those, families that are starting their family, want to start a home, like we need places for them to be. And all we have to do is make it a priority. There are already organizations that do this. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just partner with them to be able to come in and do it. We're partnering with people to build buildings, billion-dollar buildings. We can partner with those people to bring in affordable housing for people.
Exactly. Alrighty, so one of the last Arlington Urban questions that we have for you is, if elected, where do you want to see Arlington by the time that you leave office?
By the time I leave office is, let me answer that different. My view is a 100-year view. It's not a 6-year view, it's not a 3-year view. It is, where do I want to see Arlington in the 22nd century? So that is poised to be one of the premier cities in the world, that is looked upon as a leader. But the seed of it would start in my mayoralship. That is a city that is a smart city in all aspects of it. A city that will be debt-free. A city that is totally wired, like literally wherever you are in the city, you have Wi-Fi. A city that has embraced autonomous vehicles. So when you come, you won't need a car, you don't even need a person. You can hop in whatever autonomous vehicle comes to you and takes you where you need to be. Once again, we're talking about 100 years, okay? A city that has embraced green to the point, once again, 100 years, to where if you have an electric company, it is your prerogative, but we've been able to provide electricity and power in such a way that all of our citizens have a way to tap into it. If we turn the clock back a little bit, it would be similar to what Tesla was doing. People know Tesla the car, they need to know Tesla the man, and all the things that he was doing 100 years ago. So it would be to build a city that is, in the next 3 years, 6 years, build a city that is on its way to being that in 100 years. A city where people want to send their children to, whether it's physically or whether it's they just want to tap in. So imagine that your schools are so great that you may have 20 kids that are here, but you have 200 that are piped in across the world because they want to be able to be part of Miss Johnson's whatever class, and it's wonderful. And they want to send their tax dollars to the city, even though they don't live here, to be able to support the school system. That's how you increase your tax base, right? It's building those types of innovative ideas going forward that I want to be able to implement. And once again, you can't do it in 3 years, but you can build the seed of it and let other people water it for the next 97 years.
Nice. All right, so next we just have 3 community input questions. Let me pull these up real quick.
Y'all know y'all was gonna be here this long, did you?
Alrighty. So our first one is going to be from Arlington Urban viewer and rapper Free Game Griff. He asked, what would make your time in office unique?
My time in office was unique by, number one, having everyone have access to it. No matter how you feel about Obama, whether you liked him and loved him or whether you hated him, what you can't ignore is that he gave everybody access to the White House that had never been there before, right? And you've seen things there you've never seen before. That's what I want to do for local government, so that when you walk through the halls, you might hear "Annyeong haseyo," or you might hear "Bonjour, monsieur, ça va," all in the same context, because these same people now feel like they have access to the city, not just to pay their water bill, right? They have access to all areas of the city, and so I think that's probably the most unique thing is. To be able to grab all of these different ideas, to grab all of these different backgrounds, people who weren't born here, people who were born here, people who were transplanted here from other parts of the world, people who were born here in their first generation born here. And being able to bring all of them together and have all of these mixes and experiences to be able to properly govern, paying attention to those different areas in the city and not just, not even acknowledging that they exist.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Our next question is going to be from Arlington Urban viewer Dee Powell. She asked, how do you plan to incorporate the city's plan of creating local markets, small grocers, access to safe and inclusive spaces, and community hubs for people of color to feel welcomed in the downtown area?
First of all, let me say this about downtown. I think that, I think they've done a good job of making the term downtown Arlington no longer a joke, right? When people say downtown Arlington, it used to be a joke, okay? I will say this, that when you look at the organization that has been tasked with building downtown Arlington, they're doing a good job of bringing in people, but there's no diversity there, right? When you look at the people who are doing it, they're doing what you would expect them to be doing, okay? And not a lot outside of that. Not their fault, okay? This is why you want to bring in diversity of thought. When you bring in diversity of thought, by default, you start getting other types of ideas, right? So, for example, there's not a lot of big family-friendly stuff that you can do in downtown Arlington, okay? I got 4 kids, so I'm thinking family. I got 4 kids and a wife. We go out every Tuesday. We sometimes we can go out to stuff, sometimes we can't, in Arlington. And sometimes we can go out for a while, but then they kick you out at a certain time because kids can't be in here, okay? Well, that's a direct result of the people who built that, right? Those are not people with 4 children and a wife or a husband, okay? And so when you start getting the different diversified individuals involved in the process, you don't have to worry, you don't have to have a plan. By default, if you were on a committee and we were building a building and you noticed all of the bathrooms are male bathrooms, or this place is 30,000 square feet and you got 1 woman bathroom, you're gonna notice it right away. It's like, wait, women need more than that. Yeah. Y'all got 3 bathrooms. We need more than just 1, right? Because you're at the table. You don't need a plan for that because the plan was to get you to the table to get the diversity of thought to begin with. And so what I think what needs to happen is that we have to expand and not just leave it up to a small group of people to build our downtown. We have to expand that thinking to some other individuals that say, oh, let's make that family friendly. Oh, people of color are kind of like this versus that. Donuts, bagels. So Just having those people at the table would be able to bring that diversity in. You know, we got, and when I say diversity, it's everything. It's not just black, right? Because, you know, somebody who's black in 60 thinks different than somebody who's black in 15, you know? I can only think of one place that my 15-year-old can go in downtown Arlington and have a good time. I can only think of one, and he can't do that for long, right? It's only so long he can do that, and then they're gonna kick him out, right? And so, you know, being able to enhance that with different mentalities, different ideologies, and that's what a mayor's job is, to say, let's look at the whole. You know, let's pay attention to it going one way. And I think that my ability to step back and look at the whole thing, not just from a black perspective, you know, to look at the whole thing. It's like, wait a minute, are we doing a festival of lights here? You know, Diwali is coming up. You know, are we doing something for that? Have we reached out to our Indian community and see if that's to look at the whole? Because you want to talk about what breaks down racism and all that kind of stuff? Proximity. That's it. You can have the biggest racist in the world. Proximity will change that when he's around people every day, and he realizes that, okay, they're not what I've taught that they were, and they're not this, and there are some good people and bad people in every race. Proximity. How do we build that? Diversity of thought, bringing cultures together.
Nice. All right, so our last community input question is going to be from Liveable Arlington. They asked, in the years since gas drilling started here, a lot of peer-reviewed research has been done pointing to serious health issues from residents living next to drilling areas. Many Arlington residents have concerns about living next to fracking pollution. What are some steps you can take to address this public health issue?
First of all, acknowledgement. I remember, I can't remember if I was either in London or France, but I was waking up to a news article. Okay, to the TV, and it caught my attention because I'm in a hotel in London, and they're talking about Texas, and what they're talking about was fracking and drilling, and they were trying to figure out if they wanted to do it in their area, and there were some people that were concerned about things such as earthquakes. Quote, "We've done it here in Texas, and there's been no issues." End quote. I'm like, what Texas are they living in? Because I lived my whole life in Texas and never felt an earthquake until they start drilling. In some kind of way, they want to make us believe that it's not because of the drilling. We want to go and harvest the earth under you, but when it starts moving, that's not a result of it. That doesn't make sense. So first thing is acknowledging it, right? Not of the health concerns, the geological concerns. We've got to be honest about it. A lot of times people aren't honest because there's a check coming. As long as the check's coming, everything's fine. Every time an earthquake came, you watched the news. They were like, they specifically said, you know, this is not a result of you know, drilling. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, all of y'all are geologists, experts on this.
Yeah.
It's the acknowledgement of it, right? That's the very first thing. Then remember, I'm a data guy. Let's look at what the data says, period. Not trying to get the city off or not trying to take care of the drilling companies because they're writing a check. No, let's look at what the real data says. If we're looking at some real health issues, like, let's deal with that, right? Looking at some real issues with the earth moving, hundreds of earthquakes have happened. Maybe this is a bad idea. Not the politics of it. So that's the very first thing. Once again, what's different about me? I start with people first. Remember, I'll talk about families over facilities. I don't care nothing about that. You know, I've got, you know, we know how to make money. There's ways to be able to make money for the city, right, that don't include raping the citizens or doing something strange for a little piece of change, like taking money from individuals that we know are doing the citizens harm because we got to pay off debt. So the very first thing we got to do is understand that if the citizens are saying it, it's probably an issue. Probably a problem. Pay attention to the problem. Don't ignore it, right? Bring in the data. Let's look at what the data says. The data says that there's an issue with this, like real data, not data that's paid for by the fracking companies. Because we see that. Well, we did a study. Who paid for the study? right? So we run all of those. This is the games that politicians play all the time, and then they bring the data out, and this is what you see. Once again, when you see me running, it's because something is wrong, right? It's because we no longer want to play this game, and people are being hurt. So that's what I would do. First of all, let's look at a real study, talk to real people, look at the real data, right? And then make some decisions from there. My personal belief is that we're messing with the environment in ways that may be irreversible. That is my personal belief. Whenever I feel the earth move in Texas, not California, in Texas, where there's no fault lines, here in Dallas-Fort Worth, that lets me know something is probably wrong. And so you got to say, what did we do different? Well, we were drilling under the earth. Yeah, it might be the problem. That's common sense. Without looking at data, that's common sense. But like I said, we take the data and then we kind of go from there.
Nice. Well, that is all the questions that we have for you. Is there anything else you would like to say that you want people to know about you?
I mean, it's really simple. Arlington is the dream city. And we always talk about that. And I've been able to live my dream. It's been great. And I want to make sure that everyone else has an opportunity to live whatever their dream is as well, through all the things that we've talked about today. I think that we've done a wonderful job at building phenomenal facilities. We have world-class facilities, great stadiums and buildings. But I think now it's time to start putting that same type of effort into our people. Stadiums don't build cities. Peoples and families, they build cities. So I'm all about families over facilities. That's not to say that I'm not for job people. You'll interview people and they say, and I'm the last person interviewed, right? So you probably heard this, oh, I can bring jobs to the city. That sounds real good, doesn't it? Sounds good, okay? Let me tell you what really happens. Companies will say, we'll come to your city if you give us a tax break. Once again, I mentioned earlier, the majority of the tax burden is on the citizens. Why? Because we continue to give these tax breaks to companies that come in. Mm-hmm. When companies come in and they build a company there, they say, we will bring jobs. Lauren, are you a lawyer? No. Okay. So if a law office opens up across the street from you, do you automatically become a lawyer? No. Right. Just because that building is located in your vicinity does not mean that job is for you. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, you'll see the majority. I've met with all types of boards and unions and all that kind of stuff. And the interesting thing is, I'm talking to all these people who don't even live in Arlington. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you've worked outside of your city. Mm-hmm. But we will say that I'm going to bring jobs. Jobs for who? More importantly than bringing jobs, you need to make people employable, period. There are people who have been displaced by this pandemic, that have lost their job, that their businesses have shut down. They're going to need new types of training so that they're eligible for a job. I personally do not care where the job is. I don't care if you're working for a company in China and living here in Arlington, bringing money from China into Arlington. Why would I care? Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, that might be even a better deal. I care about the individual people. Saying that you're going to bring jobs sounds good. Has it worked? I was at the stadium the other day. Beautiful stadium. Mm-hmm. I talked to all the people that were working there. Guess how many I found that lived in Arlington, since we were bringing so many jobs? When you look at the upper management. When you look at the big stadium we're building, the people who built it, they don't even live in Arlington. Mm-hmm. Even the people who put the brick and mortar together, they're not even in this state. So it sounds good. Oh, we're gonna bring jobs, and everybody's excited about that, and people sign off on that. And the same thing keeps happening because they're not looking at the individual problem. Problem is that you have to make people employable. Mm-hmm. Then it doesn't matter where they work. As long as they're able to feed their family, then they're able to put food on the table, and they're able to shop local. You can make your money international. Shop local. Mm-hmm. Bring that money into this economy. That's what's important. At the end of the day, being able to take care of the people that you're looking at every day is paramount, no matter where the job is located, no matter who got the deal to bring you in, who got the tax break to come into that city. It doesn't make a difference. Politicians will make you think it does because it sounds good. Bringing jobs. I'm able to, doesn't make a difference. I've employed people all over the world, period. And I promise you, they didn't care where I was. point blank. So once again, Washington for Arlington. Go to washingtonforarlington.com. We want everyone to live the dream because we're about families over facilities.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Pastor Washington, for having us and answering our questions.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you.